Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Lead Her podcast. And we have a very special guest today, and we're in person, which is so nice. We're not on Zoom for a change. We have mentioned Jen many times on the podcast, always name dropping you. On my Instagram too. Jen has been a coach of mine, mentor of mine, and a friend as well, I'd say now. She helped me so much last year, and I would honestly say I don't think this podcast would exist or Lead Her would exist if I didn't meet you last year. And it's amazing to see how far we have come from, when did I first contact you? August,
September, maybe last year.
Around that time of the year is when I contacted you, and to think where we are now, I feel like it's been long, but also so much has happened, and it's also been so quick at the same time. I love Jen to bits. She's helped me so much. So she was the first person when I started this podcast. I was like, we need to get Jen Rolwich on the podcast and share your story as well. Because when I first started working with you with a coaching relationship, actually, it's really hard. And you know me, I kept trying to ask Jen questions. And
this is your
let's talk about you. And you were throwing it back on me. And I found that really difficult because I think I like to build a relationship.
Yeah.
And then when I felt really bad when I did start finding out more about you, I was like, I didn't know this.
I know.
But you've got an incredible story to share, and I'd love if we can share this with our members today. So let's start with what you do now and where this all kind of started from.
Yeah. So it's taken me a long time to figure out what's the title of what I do. So I said to someone the other day, I only figured out what I do the beginning of this year. I've been doing it for a long time, but I only just figured out what it is. So I kind of take two different approaches in my business. I'm primarily a brain-based behaviour change coach. So I work with people to change the way that they think and the way that they believe to then change the way that they behave. And I use neuroscientific principles to sort of change the way that people think, behave, act. And I apply that in the health and fitness industry. So people inside coaching programmes, I'm really there to support through the mental and emotional side of the journey of change. So I do that. And then I also do coach education for health and fitness coaches. So I'm currently training to be a coach supervisor, and I'll be finished that hopefully by early next year. And basically bringing coaching skill and ability into a sector where we have many coaches, but no one has ever really been taught how to coach. So I'm really just, I'm working inside a high performance coach with Joe, as you know, not a stranger to you, and really just focusing on how we can support health and fitness coaches to really deepen and enhance the art and the craft of coaching, and really bring that through into the medium of what they do. And I'm an accredited professional coach, so I have been an accredited coach since 2020, 2020. I always forget because that time's just a big blur. So I'm an accredited professional coach. I'll go up to the next level hopefully in the next couple of years when I can be bothered doing the application. But right now the next phase in my coach development is becoming a supervisor, so supervising the practice of other coaches to make them better.
Amazing, awesome. And because you did go to university first, didn't you? You were like me, you went to university and you just got through, or did you decide?
With the skin in my teeth.
Yeah.
I was a terrible student.
Yeah, dragging through it. What did you actually do at uni though?
So for the first 2 years I studied psychology. Yeah. And then I dropped it because it was too hard. And I couldn't commit to it. Yeah. And then I kind of changed electives. I did Spanish for a couple of years. And then I did politics. So my final degree was technically politics and sociology. It's I think my degree statement is social sciences, but I focus mostly on politics and sociology, and then I had this focus on gender, so the intersection between gender and class was my final year focus, because that was what I was really, really interested in, but at that point, just to see 41 at an exam, I was like, great, passed, happy days.
Doesn't matter, does it? Nobody looks into those things later in the future.
Never.
So you were kind of going through university, but then how did we get to a stage where you're like, you want to do all this help with coaching now? There's a huge mission that we'll discuss a wee bit later as well, but for you to be like, coaches aren't coaching properly. And I know you had a really kind of tough time in the past that kind of led to you eventually getting going through different coaches and seeing how the coaches kind of worked, and then being like, right, I want to change this industry. But do you mind sharing with us like where you did lose yourself a little bit in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I battled with my mental health my whole life as far as I can remember. I must have been around, all of my mental health had really intersected with my body and my sense of self since I was a young child. I was a bit of a weird kid. Like, I really struggled to make friends. I just liked to play on my own. Like, my mum used to always say there'd be kids phoning the house being like, Jennifer, come out to play, and I would be like, I'm too busy.
Like, tell them I'm not in.
Yeah, I'm too busy looking through my spider encyclopedia and trying to figure out what ones are in the garden or polishing my rock collection. Funny. Like, I don't have time to play with other children, right? So I was a total weirdo. I was just a geek, right? Yeah. I loved school. I loved to learn. I hated the summer holidays because it was too long off school. So I was just a bit of a strange kid. And I did make friends and stuff, but I just could never really be bothered with it. I liked to do my own thing. So I can remember, I must have been maybe around 9 or 10. I can remember really vividly going on a family holiday. When we were growing up, my mum and dad didn't have a lot of money, so we had never been abroad before. So I think we went abroad for the first time when I was 9 or 10, and there's a picture of me and my wee sister standing like back to back with bikinis on. So my mum used to call us Mary Kate and Ashley. And we're standing back to back with bikinis on, and I'm just a young kid, and I can remember looking at that photo and thinking that I looked fat. And I was 9 years old. Like, I was just a kid.
And I've seen that photo as well, and it's just
it's so sad when like you think about that and you look at it. And I think about like my niece Vivian is 9, she'll be 10 this year, and I'm like, if you ever felt that way about your body, like, I don't know how I would cope. But I can remember that's been the first time that I was quite conscious and aware of my body. And as I went through puberty, I kind of put on a bit of puppy fat, and I was kind of getting and I was kind of getting bullied for being chubby and all that kind of thing. And then I went to high school, and it just got so bad because I was an easy target. I didn't stick up for myself or fight back, so I was a bit of an easy target for bullying. People used to slag me for being a VL. Do you remember that? Virgin lips.
Yeah, I don't think Joe. Like when Joe came to Scotland, there's so many words that I've had to teach him. They mean. I was like, oh, BL, have you heard of that before? And he's like, no clue what that is. But yeah, virgin lips means you've not kissed anyone before. Yeah.
So I was a VL until I was like 15 or 16, so I went through it. Like, in the school I went to school, and
so much pressure to that first kiss, isn't there?
Madness, and like,
you do it with anyone just to say that you're not a VL.
100%. And then also couldn't break my VL, but also would not speak to a boy. So like, where was that? Like, what was going to happen there? Wouldn't look the road they were on, but was hoping that they would just appear at my door and whinge me. So I used to get teased terribly for that. That old classic, I kissed somebody at my gran's, but never true. But I was just so like insecure in myself and like getting bullied for like being fat and all that. So I first went on a diet, I think when I was 11 or 12 maybe. I can remember restricting my food intake around about the age of 10, but I remember consciously making a decision to go on a diet around the age of 12. And my mum still to this day like praises me for it, which is fucking weird. But I remember I used to, every single day I'd go to school, I'd have a Nutri-Grain bar, and the first break I would have a tuna salad sandwich, a bottle of water and an apple. And then sometimes I would eat dinner, sometimes I would just skip it entirely. And I ate that way for like a year. So I lost all this weight, got so much praise for it. And this is the really difficult dynamic, I think, about your relationship with your body, is that even though I was restricting my food intake so severely at such a young age, like such a developmental stage in my life, I was praised for doing so. And then I can remember probably around the age of like 14 or 15 was the first time that I really started to notice struggles with my mental health. It was the first time I started to have like depressive thoughts, suicidal thoughts. And I really struggled with those transitional years in school. Because I just wanted to learn and I didn't really want to do anything else. But I was really into music, so music was my whole life. I started playing flute when I was 10. Controversial when you go to a Catholic school in Scotland, but I started playing flute. No, I was 9, when I started playing flute, and I started playing piano when I was 12. So music was like my escape. So all the kind of strange kids in school would flock to the music department.
I was in a trumpet player.
And
I hated walking to school at west side of Glasgow. School's bloody rough, and I feel like I'm relating to so much of this. It's horrible. I had my big fucking trumpet case. But I didn't love playing the trumpet. I just was made to play the trumpet. I didn't value it back then. And I felt so embarrassed walking to school with my big trumpet. And I ended up just leaving it in the cupboard and never taking it home, and I got into trouble and stuff. But yeah, I relate to like the music days. Yeah,
100%. And it was like a solace. Like my grandpa was a musician, so my grandpa also played trumpet. And he played the organ, so he kind of nurtured my musical talent, because I was like, I'm not a braggy, I try not to brag about it, but I was really, really good. Like I had a real natural talent for it, but I was also very committed to it. You have to be so intensely committed, which I absolutely was. So like the music department was a bit of a solace, and then kind of the more I hung around there, I was in every band, choir, orchestra, you name it. There was not a day that I finished school on time, because I was always at something after school. And then I started to kind of make friends there, and started to like went through puberty, got highlights, started to become visible to boys, and really sort of started to come into like my sense of self. But that was also around the time my grandpa passed away. My grandpa was a huge, huge part of my life, so I remember finding that extremely difficult, and it was the first time I was put on antidepressants, so when I was 16. And I had to go to like the educational psychologist and all of that kind of thing. So, but my whole journey through school was I was going to be a music teacher. So I was being primed to be a music teacher. I was going to RSAMD. I used to go to 3 private lessons just for flute. So I would do an hour of actual playing, then an hour on tone and breathing, and then an hour on music theory. So my music theory would cut into piano, then I would do 2 piano lessons a week. Like the amount of hours out with school that I was putting into this, then I was in like orchestras out with the school. So I was in the Youth Works Orchestra, SMD, and then I was in LOS, which was like a local orchestra. It was my whole life, like that was going to be my career. And then at the last second I decided to go to uni and study psychology, and my music teachers were going ballistic. Like I had the same piano teacher all the way through school. She was also my higher music teacher, and she was like, what are you doing? Like they were so angry at me, which I can understand, but I don't know, it wasn't like a pure conscious decision. It was just very much like, I don't think this is right for me. And now reflecting back, I don't think that teaching would have been the right path for me. I just don't think it would have been, it would have been great getting to like play music every day and stuff, but I don't know, something was just telling me it's not for me. And then when I was 16, so I'd had like a couple of boyfriends by this point. Now you have your high school boyfriend. Wasn't a VL anymore, thank God. And I'd had like a couple of high school boyfriends. You know, your first high school boyfriend, you think that you're in love, and you go out for 3 months, but it's like the whole definitive part of your life. So funny to think back.
I know, I'm cringing right now.
Oh, we've all been there, right? Like the stuff you used to write your diary with your high school boyfriend, I'm like, burn it, I never want to know. And then at the age of 16, I met my ex, and we were together for 6 years, but that became an abusive relationship. So that relationship was the toughest period of my life. So from the age of 16 to 22, I was in an abusive relationship, and it's hard because sometimes at first when I would look back, I thought it was only abusive once we lived together, and actually now that I've been through therapy and I've reflected on the whole time, it was abusive from 3 months in. And the challenge is I was abused in every way that a person can be abused, physically, sexually, financially, emotionally. Like there was everything present in my abusive relationship, but the main component was emotional abuse and coercive control. And the difficulty with coercive control is that there's no evidence. So it was really hard for me.
Can you give us an example of that for anyone that doesn't know what that is?
Yeah, coercive control is basically like the manipulation, them using manipulation tactics like gaslighting, things that make you feel like you're going mad, humiliation.
Like you're making things up.
Yeah, you're making things up. Or people who are coercive control, they're primarily narcissists. So what narcissists will do is everyone who meets your narcissistic partner will say, what a lovely guy. He's so charming. And that's exactly my ex was like, so charming, could work the room, polite to people, friendly, but behind closed doors was an entirely different person. So when you are experiencing the person that they are behind closed doors, you don't feel like you can speak to anybody about it because they're like, he's such a nice guy, such a polite young man. You know, so they deliberately use manipulation tactics, control tactics, which were present through our whole relationship, but escalated to a point when we lived together that was just unmanageable. He would control what I ate, what I wore, how many times a day I showered, the order in which I did things, who I could spend time with, when I went to work, when I didn't go to work, and uni was a huge component of that.
I was going to ask you that because that was 16, so you apply for uni when you're like 17, 18.
Yeah.
So did that affect you dropping music, or
I think,
more you choosing
I don't know if it affected me dropping music. I can remember I applied to King's College London and got in. And I remember I was going to go to KCL and that was going to be the thing that I was going to do. But then I met him and decided, I don't want to go to London because I've got a boyfriend. So stupid. But when you're young, you don't think these things through. And then we were together when I was at uni, and that whole situation was so chaotic. I was like very entrenched in his life, so there was a lot of family drama. His dad passed away when he was quite young. There was a lot of just strange dynamics with his family that a lot of the time I was going on to save the day and rescue and support his mum and his sister and try and support him, and there was just a lot of drama all of the time that I sort of got wrapped up in. And then when I was at uni, I worked 2 part-time jobs as well, and I tutored piano. So like I was working 3 jobs, so like there wasn't, and the way that I was brought up was like, you work, you make a living, like you need to make it work. I didn't really get like much help financially, so I was like, I need to make sure that I can survive. So I just never really had like the time or the mental focus for uni, and my mental health was just getting worse and worse and worse. So by this point I'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I was put on an antipsychotic and a really high dose of an antidepressant. So for years I was just numb, like I just didn't feel anything, and just really attempted suicide when I was 18, like just really horrific battles with my mental health. And the difficulty is that because I had already struggled with my mental health previously, I just assumed that this was the way that I was. So when I was going to see therapists or counsellors, there was a huge component in my life that I was not sharing with them, but I didn't know I was being abused. So it's hard
so young, isn't it? Like you always think, oh, when you're 18 and 19 you're an adult, but I don't think I was an adult until I was at least 28.
Oh, even minimum.
So it's such a young age to really understand something like that, I think.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like the traditional definition of abuse is physical. So when I was younger and I thought of domestic abuse, I thought of like Trevor and Mo from EastEnders. That was what we were like, you know, led to believe was. So because that wasn't happening to me, I was like, oh, well, it must be somehow my fault. It must be the way that I am. And then obviously through this whole time, food became a massive source of comfort for me again. It's that like constant through my life that food was always the source of comfort. So I put on loads of weight, lost it, put it on, lost it, put it on, lost it, like yo-yo dieted for years and years and years. But he would kind of humiliate me for like, you're fat, you're ugly, you're disgusting, nobody will ever find you attractive. But then if I lost weight, I was punished for that as well, because then I became attractive, and that's not what he wanted. So it was just a really hard dynamic to like live in, never mind try and get a degree in. You know so so by some fucking miracle I managed to get a degree with the absolute skin in my teeth. And I can remember, so that would have been 2014 I graduated, and right before that, so 2013 I lost all the weight and like was living my best life. And don't get me wrong, like sometimes when you talk about because I was so young, I did miss out on loads. Like I didn't get to go to teen party with my pals, I didn't get to go girls' holidays as much. Like I did get some of those experiences, but not to the extent that I should have. I didn't really get the chance to live like a normal, like late teens, early 20s kind of life as I should have. So like 2011 I kind of started going to Archie's, right, going raving, loved it, like best days of my life. And I just started to come into myself a wee bit more, I think.
And you were still in that relationship at that time?
Still in that relationship, yeah. So I remember going to Ibiza in 2013 with my pals, having a great time and just sort of being like, this is what my life is supposed to be like. Like, I'm not supposed to be trapped in a flat, like on a Saturday night eating fucking fajitas and like something as well that like there's so many things that are overlooked when you're in the dynamic of an abusive relationship, that like you don't get to eat the food that you like. You have to eat the food that they like. You don't get to listen to the music. I didn't listen to the songs that I liked for years, films that I loved. You don't get to do any of that, so you don't really get to be a person. You become a person that is orchestrated around not pissing them off. So you become a version of you that, you know, you can live in that dynamic with.
It's like survival, really, 100%. Isn't it? You just try to survive and get through each day and do anything to 100%, please everybody else.
100%. But I remember going to Ibiza in 2013 and loving it and having a great time, and it was almost as if he's seen that in me, and it was like, nah, come back into the clutches. So I moved in with him in 2000, and I think the end of 2013. So we would have lived together for probably about a year and a half, and that's when it really escalated to a point where I just felt in constant danger. Still didn't know what was happening to me, but like just the aggression, like just a really terrifying situation to live with. I was kind of confined to one room for most of the time, so that in itself was just like being in a prison cell most of the time, trying to pretend to family and friends that everything's normal and everything's okay, when in the inside I'm like, I think that he's going to kill me. And I think it's a tough one, because I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I was in danger. So like you said, I'm surviving through the danger. So graduated in 2014. And I worked in a call centre part-time, so I was working there full-time for a year just for money, because I was bringing in all the money pretty much into the house. He worked like 4 hours a week. So I got in loads of debt trying to just keep the lights on, choosing between heating and eating. Like, we lived in like severe poverty. So managed to somehow survive that whole year, which is just a wee bit of a blur. And then kind of 2015, would have been maybe April time, I went to Benidorm with my pals, and I'd only been that one girls' holiday at Ibiza, and then the abuse got worse after that. So in my head I was like, what's going to happen if I go here? So I went to Benidorm for 5 days. I had the time of my life.
Go see Sticky Vicky?
We didn't actually. We were invited to go and see Sticky Vicky, but no, I was too busy chatting up boys, to be honest. Living the life that I never got to live. And he used to always tell me that like I'm not funny, like I'm unattractive, and then all of a sudden I was getting chatted up,
making people laugh,
and I was making people laugh, and I was like, hold on a minute, like something's not right here. So I feel like that was the mindset shift for me, that was like, something's not adding up. Went home, things just got worse and worse and worse, and then on a random Tuesday afternoon, he was at work. He worked at Domino's at the time, so he would work at night. I had just come in for work because I worked during the day. And I can just remember sitting in the bedroom, and my friend phoned me, and she was like, what are you up to? And I was like, I think I'm going to leave. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I just think I'm going to leave. And I think sometimes people maybe assume that it's like a planned thing when you leave. And for some people it is. Like, but for me it was just like, it was almost like a light bulb moment. I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. And the difficulty is that you know in the back of your mind that at some point he's going to kill me. So I think by this point I'd recognised that if this continues, I'm going to die. So I need to get out as fast as I possibly can. And I put on The Man Who by Travis, great album. Packed as much stuff as I could. I was cramming stuff into bin bags and Asda bags.
And we were scared.
Petrified. Because statistically, a woman will try and leave an abusive relationship 7 times before she's successful. So I had tried to leave him multiple times. We'd broke up tons over the years, but you always get sucked back in. And but it's statistically 7 times before you leave successfully, but a woman is most likely to be killed when she is leaving. So I remember being like, if he comes home, he's going to kill me. So the fear that's like coursing through you. And I just packed all this stuff in a bag. I can remember we were in the first floor tower and I heard like a noise coming out the lift.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, it's him. And I was like, right, I'll just jump out the window and run.
Yeah.
And like I was about 18 stone at this point, so I don't know where I was running quickly, but it's survival instinct. So I managed to get all my stuff. We were engaged by this point. I got engaged on my 19th birthday. Grim. My friends used to call me a child bride. I left my key, my engagement ring and a note, and I was like, I'm not coming back. Like, don't contact me. And I drove to my mum and dad's, and I had on Flowers in the Window by Travis. So this is on mine and my husband's wedding video. It's like their song, my freedom song. Yeah. And I put that song on and I just drove away, and I just like, I didn't even cry. It was like, I was elated. Like I can't describe to you the feeling that, because I was like, I'm fucking free. Like I never ever need to go back.
Wow.
And then everything just, my life just changed from that point on.
Yeah.
Whew, I know. How long was that?
Take a break. Let's kill you down. It's absolutely roasting in here. So if you're watching on YouTube,
I think I'm adding more heat in.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure.
So if just, I know you're not maybe qualified to say this, but if anyone was in that kind of situation, what would maybe be something that you would say could be a first step to help them in any way? Because like you said, it's really, really hard and really difficult, but a lot of people are going through it.
I think if you recognise any of those things that I've said in yourself, Women's Aid saved my life.
Yeah.
They made me believe that there was an alternative when I thought I had no way out. And I actually used to sit on the board. I volunteered as a board member at Glasgow East Women's Aid for years, just as my way of giving back.
Yeah.
They were so supportive, they were so validating, because I didn't know what was happening to me, so just to have people validate it, to support me, to help me stay away, that's also probably the hardest bit. Getting out is one part, but staying away was really, really hard, because they became even more manipulative. He used to send me, leave me voicemails telling me he was going to kill me and all that. Like he used to turn up places that I was. He joined my gym. He'd never been to the gym in his life. They start to like, it was like stalking behaviour. And the police are not interested in really until something actually happens to you. So they were so supportive with me at that time, and just helping me to stay away. So 100% Women's Aid. You'll have a local Women's Aid in your area. They have been the biggest support to me in this whole journey. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. And then, what did Jen do with her life after that? Like,
oh man,
obviously you didn't keep working in the call centre.
No, I didn't. I did. So I got a graduate job with NHS Scotland on their management training scheme. This would have been towards the end of 2015, maybe the November. So I just had that like chunk of time where I was just living my best single life. I was catching up for lost time. My pals used to call me Tinderella.
Do you know what I love as well? If you are watching, like you can just see you smiling and you just look...
Such a happy time.
Look back at that time, just you can see it on your face, the energy that you're giving out, just thinking about that time.
It's
and
so nostalgic, like, because I didn't know who I was, right? So I didn't know, like I said, that I hadn't done anything that I liked in such a long time. So I was like, I need to go on this journey of discovery and figure out what do I want for my life, like, who am I, what do I enjoy, what do I want in a partner, because he was my first serious boyfriend, so I had no comparison for what a normal relationship was other than an abusive one. So I had to figure out, like, what is the life that I'm going to live for myself. So I just went and lived my best single life. It was so much fun. My pals were still my pals who I have to this day, who were just immensely supportive. They expected me to be like crumbling and in bits, and they were like, you just sailed off into the sunset.
Flew away,
So I started with the NHS in November 2015, and they said to me, what do you want to do? Like, weird, because you would do rotational placements. It was like a 2-year programme, and I was like, I have no idea. And I said, I'd done a bit of training when I worked, it was the John Lewis call centre I worked in. I was like, I'd done a bit of training there, but like, I don't know like where else I would go. And they were like, fuck it, we'll put you in HR. So they put me in HR, hated it. It was too statistical. I'm like a creative, like qualitative person. I don't really do data and details. So they put me in there, and then they moved me to a department called the National Leadership Unit. So the National Leadership Unit were responsible for developing all the leaders across NHS Scotland. So this this was a national board, so it wasn't like a territorial board in a specific area. So we were based in Edinburgh, so I used to commute. I'm from Blantyre originally, Blantyre, if you're for the local area. And I used to commute from Blantyre to Edinburgh 5 days a week. It was grim, but I loved it because it was dead exciting, and I was starting my career, and so kind of went into that team. Found it really difficult as well. Like, I don't know if you'll get this, but like, I think when you grow up in a working class area, you're always distinctly aware of the fact when you're not around other working class people. Yeah. So this was the first time in my whole life where I'd worked somewhere that I wasn't surrounded with people like me, people who spoke like me. So, and I'm putting my phone voice on the now, but like, you know, I'm really slang. I just talk the way that like people from my area talk. So I remember getting into this office in Edinburgh, and they were so posh, and I was trying to do like my best phone voice, but like it just kept coming out. I sound like a pure scheme rat. And they used to make fun of me for my accent. They used to say that they didn't understand anything that I said, boring. They didn't know what a munchie box was. Yeah. And I was like, have you ever lived? They didn't know what being in Bargains was. Wow. And I'm like, where are you from? So it was just a big like culture shock, I think. And then I met Sharon, who was my first boss, and Sharon is still my mentor to this day. She is just a powerhouse of a woman. She's like 2 kids, like very successful, a wildly successful career, had a really tough childhood, but just made so much goodness out of adversity. Her and her husband both, he's a sheriff, like really big, high achievers, and she was just a total go-getter. And we laugh now because like we meet up for dinner every now and again, and she's like, I'm so proud of you, and like where you started, she was like, because you were a nightmare. And I was just a big ball of trauma, do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really know how to behave. I didn't really know anything about professionalism. And she like went through me. I remember I'd maybe been there like 2 weeks, and she was like, right, see that outfit you're wearing? You can't wear that to your work. She was like, your work is a professional environment. Go and buy a suit. Go and buy it. So she told me everything I had to buy. She's like, I want you here on time at your desk. Like, she was so tough love, but such a monumental part of my career because she took me everywhere with her. She took me to meetings at the government and all this stuff. So she just basically trained me up in organisational development, which is what my career was for 8 years, I think. So I just worked my way up the ranks pretty quickly. Most people come into OD at the end of their career, so I was kind of doing it in reverse at the start, but I was so like eager and hungry to learn that she just pushed me through
up so much quicker as well.
100%.
Just love something.
Totally. And then a job, the level up came up, and I got it, and then the next level up came up. And I remember saying to her, Sharon, I can't do a band 7, I'm too young. I was 26 at this point. And band 7's where you start to veer kind of into leadership territory. And I was like, I can't do it. And she was like, yes, you fucking can. She was like, put in the application, go to the interview, here's what you're going to do on. I smashed the interview, I got the job, and I worked in that job for all through COVID, all through the pandemic, which was great. It was so nice to feel like I was making a contribution. Because my normal job as an OD consultant was kind of building services and designing services, and then building and developing the teams around those. And then I worked with 2 directors kind of one-to-one, so a lot of leadership stuff, a lot of kind of whenever there's people in a problem, there was work for me to do. So I loved it. It was great. And during the pandemic, we obviously our job was all corporate, so there was no need for it during the pandemic, but we set up these rest and recuperation hubs in every hospital in the board. So it was just a safe space for staff to come and have a cup of tea and read a paper and not have to think about, you know, COVID. And that whole time, what they went through was just horrific. I remember people just coming in collapsing for exhaustion. It was mad. So we would do a bit of coaching. There was psychologists providing like trauma support and stuff like that. But we had a grounded cabin crew who were volunteering. It's this thing called Project Wingman, and what a laugh we had with them. They used to come in with the tea trolleys, not see the trolleys for the plane. They used to bring them in, and they would tell us all these stories. They would make everybody laugh. They would put on discos. Like, it was such a horrible time, but it was like a wee like pocket we had.
Wee bit of brightness.
And amongst all that, so it was. I loved my job, but there came a point where it was time time to go.
Yeah, amazing. And it's like the reason I wanted to have you here as well is to share such a tough story, to then show that how much life you have after that as well, that experience and how things have gone in the right direction for you. It's almost like everybody loves like a success story, don't they? So I just love that. And that's not where the success finishes, but that was success, to come out of that relationship and build your life and find out who you are as well as a person. It's a lot of work that had to go into doing that. And now we know you're doing different stuff today. But during this whole new career and finding yourself again, I think we also went through a process of being like, right, I want to get better, healthier. Well, maybe just lose weight was your opinion back then. Now it's more about being fitter and healthier and better quality of life, hopefully. But I think you did go through that transition. You had a lot of kind of crappy coaches, which I think has led you more into your mission and what you told us at the start that you do today.
100%.
So you kind of went through some negative experiences again through dieting. You want to share a little bit of some of your crazy stories?
But like how we would need, I feel like we could do a whole separate podcast on this, right? There is not a diet that exists in the world that I haven't done. So kind of beginning at end of 2015, I met Paul, my husband. We had known each other for years. I actually met him when I was 19, and we'd kind of always, I remember him. He apparently doesn't remember me because he was so cool he couldn't possibly remember me. But we got together kind of very end of 2015, like December. So by this point I'd been in a relationship for a few years. Early days of our relationship were so tough because I didn't know how to be in a relationship. So we really went through hell together, but he was so patient with me and helping me to learn how to allow someone to love me. So we got engaged in 2018, and then I had been doing, by this point I'd done every diet under the sun: military diet, Cambridge diet, Juice Plus, Weight Watchers, Slimming World, Scottish Slimmers, 1,000 calories a day, 800 calories a day. Cambridge was by far the worst.
I was going to say Cambridge is the worst.
Cambridge is brutal. So. You just don't chew anything.
No.
Like it's just shake soups.
Like 500 calories
450 calories. So I was 18 stone at my heaviest, and I was in 450 calories a day, and I felt like I was on the verge of fainting daily, and was like, it'll be worth it. But the issue is that I appeal to people like me because I could lose 10 pounds in a week. So it gave you that big rush, but it was so unsustainable. It's so bad for you. The one who used to drink aloe vera juice, living fit or something like that. There's genuinely, I don't think there's a diet that I've not done. Special K, that was another highlight. So by this point I'd gained and lost so many times. And we got engaged obviously in 2018. I'd been with so many cowboy PTs. I used to get a PT who used to be with a bin bag when I trained.
That's one I always remember.
Because he told me that if I sweat more, I burn more calories. Believed it. Used to go to this boot camp where the guy used to make us like carry each other on our backs, and like he was actually a really nice guy, but used to make you do mental shit. And
some people love mental shit.
I love mental shit now, but like that was definitely like dangerous mental shit, like beyond mental. And I think it was 2017 maybe I started playing American football. So my friend's husband has played American football for years. He used to play in America and stuff, and he played for the East Kilbride Pirates. And she phoned me and she was like, "Oh, Stephen's football team are starting a women's team. Do you want to come and join?" And I was like, absolutely not. Like I was the kid that had a note for PE every single week. Like my PE teacher used to just see me walking past going to Greg's. Like I was not doing physical activity. And she was like, "Look, just come and give it a try, and if you like it, like just come and see." Went to one training session, and the first time I tackled someone into the ground, I was hooked. That was me. Like the
adrenaline of that, I can imagine.
So good. And like we used to train on a Wednesday night, so like see we had a really tough day at work. We used to do, I can't remember what it's called. Was it Okies? What did we call it? I can't even remember. Where you would just be one-on-one with a girl and like first one to the ground. There's technique, and obviously my technique wasn't great. It was more just my mass that supported me. But I was really, really good at tackling, so I was D-line. And I used to just always get them in their arse. Like, and I remember like coaches saying to me, like, "Jen, we're training, like don't swipe everybody." They were like, "Go at 75%. I'm like 100%, smashing everything. It was great. So I played American football for years, loved it. It was probably my first introduction to like movement that I enjoyed. Because movement for me had always been only for fat loss.
Yeah.
So I played that for years, had to pack it in because I kept getting injured. I snapped my humerus in 3 places and I was in a sling for 12 weeks, and Paul was like, he had to wash, dry and style my hair, and he was like, you can't play this anymore. So I stopped playing football, kind of was trying to find something, couldn't really engage with enjoying exercise or losing weight or whatever. So August 2019, I contacted this guy, Mark Strathern. So I knew who Mark was. We grew up kind of in the same area. Like we lived like 10 minutes apart from each other. I'd always known who he was, and I can remember like seeing his social media and be like, I don't like him.
Yeah.
It's not for me. Not for me. Like, and he was talking to people exactly like me, which is why I didn't like him.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, wouldn't understand me. So I'd seen a girl that I knew get a really amazing result with him.
Yeah.
So eventually I was like, oh, fuck, because he was known for being like the best like PT in our area, right? So I was like, fuck, I'm just going to bite the bullet because my wedding was fast approaching. I hadn't lost any weight. So I contacted him, started working with him online. I was a nightmare as an online client. I just did nothing and lied about it. I would do like maybe 2 good weeks and then like fall off the face of the earth and back in, back out. So I bullied him. I was like, please take me face to face. Please take me face to face. So eventually he was like, fine. He just opened up a slot for me. As he was already working like 13 hours a day, right? Yeah. Like, because he'd built his business up to be really successful by this point. So I was like, please squeeze me in. So I started working with him on the gym floor. And for the first time in my life, the last PT I'd been at before him was also a cowboy, put me on a starvation diet, started sexually harassing my pal, like he was a nutter. Yeah. And it was the first time I'd felt like respected and heard and understood. He didn't just assume that because I was carrying extra weight that like I didn't know what I was doing or that I wasn't interested. Like he really took the time to understand me, and he knew there was like something beneath the layers, but like I'm an onion, so like I'm not letting you in. You need to spend time peeling them away. And to be fair to him, he did. He peeled away the layers. Yeah. And we built a really good relationship. And then in 2020, obviously the gyms closed, and I remember messaging him and I was like, "Do you think like when the gyms are going to open back up, do you get any indication of that?" And he was like, "I'm not going back in the gym floor. I'm going online only." And he was like, "Listen, I understand if like you don't want to still be in the programme." And I was like, absolutely not, like I'll be sticking about. So I lost, like I wanted to lose 5 stone in 6 months for my wedding. My wedding got cancelled anyway, but I did end up losing like 5.5 stone, and just really started to like get a whole appreciation for my health, my well-being. Like it was no longer just about the fat loss element, which was such a transformation for someone like me who my whole life had been focused around just losing weight. And I think that's really influenced why I do what I do now, because had someone given a shit about me a long time before like I met Mark, how different could things have been for me? Like don't get me wrong, you needed to be in the right position as well for it to be successful, but it was almost as if he knew that I had potential, so he never gave up on me. Whereas every time someone else would always give up on me. So it was genuinely life-changing, and has really influenced why I do what I do now, because I'm determined to make sure that every coach leaves the person in a better place than they found them, because there's so many people out there waiting for their lives to be changed, and like you can be that coach with the right skill and ability.
Yeah. Amazing. And I think I was going to say to you as well, like, so obviously you were still in NHS, you were doing your leadership job, smashing it in there, and then you met Mark, and I think Mark was maybe the first person that was like, hey, you know quite a lot of stuff here that could help other people that we're working with. So how did that kind of happen with Mark? So 2020, I did my first, so by this point I'd done my postgrad in organisational design and development, OD&D. My plan was that I would work my way up in the NHS, and then maybe one day in the far off distant future I would run my own business doing OD consultancy. So that was the long-term plan at that point in my life. And then in 2020 I was doing my coach accreditation, and you need to do a certain amount of like case study hours to qualify. So I was trying to think like, who could I make my case study, because I didn't really want it to be somebody in work. So I was like, who's the kind of person that I think would be up for something like this? So I thought of Mark, because at this point he was going through a big transition in his business. This was also around about the time I think he started working for Authority Network. So he was in a big transitional phase of his life that coaching
would really benefit him, and also it helped me to get my qualification.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'd started kind of meeting up and going for a coffee and going for a walk every now and again by this point. And I said to him, look, would you be up for being my guinea pig?
Yeah.
And he was like, aye, absolutely. Like, this would be really helpful for me. So we started, he was my first ever like proper coaching client, which is funny to think. So we started doing that work together, and then I qualified in 2020. And he had built up his programme to be like, you know, this big online thing. He was expanding it out. He wanted to hire a team. And he said to me, look, would you consider maybe coming in and doing like a talk for my guys on values or something? And I was like, oh, Mark, I wouldn't know what to say. Yeah. And he was like, Jen, I can't get you to shut up. Like, if anything, as you'll have probably figured out by now, trying to get you to stop talking is more of a challenge. So I was like, look, I'll do one. I was like, but I'm not really like, I'll do one and see how it goes, but I'm not really interested in doing any more than that. And I did my first training inside his community. So I did my hot seat in February 2021, and I said, oh, I'd love to work for myself one day, but that's at least 10 years away. And I did it 18 months later. Yeah. And then I did my first training for his guys, I think April, it was right before I got married, April 2021. And I've never left. Yeah. And so basically built.
And you enjoyed it?
Loved it. Yeah. Loved it. It was so funny to see the fact that like I know things that are valuable to people. Yeah. You know, like that felt like such an alien
completely
concept.
Different audience from the people in NHS, I guess, to general population.
100%.
And then when I first met you, you were literally going full on self-employed, and we'll just finish up with this and do one more question. Yeah. But like, I know what that feels like when you're finally leaving a safe salary and pay, and you've worked so hard and built your way up to be like, shit. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna be self-employed. Yeah. And I remember just seeing you in that moment, and I was just thinking about all these emotions, and how were you feeling, and were you scared or terrified? What pushed you to just do it?
So I think, I started, the business officially started in October 21. Yeah. I delivered a training for his guys, and he was like, my phone is like buzzing with people asking me. He'd shared a training, I think, in the Authority Network that I'd done, and everyone's like, can we book her, can we book her, can we book her? So he was like, how do you feel about it? And I was like, fuck it, I'll just do it. Yeah. So I started, so by this point, we'd moved in with Paul's mum and dad to save for a house. So I literally built my entire business at a fold-out desk in my mum-in-law's spare room with fucking Bill Gates. And so I used to work full-time during the day, and then I would run trainings and coaching sessions at night and in weekends. So like I didn't have a day off. So like really challenging time.
And I think when you're building a business, massively. It's your baby, isn't it? Yeah. And you just love it, and you work all these crazy hours. Looking back now, you're like, fuck doing that. I know. Because you're building it, it's so exciting, I think.
Totally. And it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like it was getting such good responses that I was like, I just need to roll with this. Yeah. So rolled with it. That time in my life personally was really tough. My mental health was horrendous, and I had to go back to therapy because I'd never fully recovered from my trauma. So I had to go back to therapy at the beginning of last year. Last year was honestly one of the toughest but most rewarding years of my life. So I kind of worked my arse off really to build this business, save for the house. So we bought the house in March 22, and I remember Mark saying to me, you need to leave your job, you need to leave your job. And I would never have done it had he not pushed me to do it. And I said, look, I need to buy the house and I need to buy a car because I won't get finance for a car without, if I'm self-employed. I was like, so I need to buy a house, I need to buy a car. And he was like, right, okay. So I bought the house in March 22, and we moved in. And I bought he was like, when are you going to look at cars? When are you going to look at cars? And I was like, I'm going. So I went to look at cars in the April. And the day I drove my car out that showroom, he texted me and he was like, hand your notice in, hand your notice in. So
we all need a Mark in our life,
like
he just
everything.
Mark.
Listen, everything that's happened to me in my life, Mark has bullied me. Between Mark and Paul, they team up together and text each other to bully me. So handed in my notice and I left my job August 22. The job had changed so much that I just wasn't doing what my job was anymore. So I just kind of worked so hard to build it up so that I was in a really good financial position to be able to leave. And that was August 22, and I've just never looked back. And it's mad because at the time it was so terrifying. The NHS is a job for life. You can't be made redundant. It's so secure. So to go from that to being like, I need to create my own security was terrifying, but the best thing that I've ever done for me as a person, 100%.
Yeah, and the Jen sitting in a house with an abusive partner, do you think she could have ever seen you be where you are now in a happy relationship and insane job?
And you know,
everything good and healthy.
Everything I do now is for her. Yeah, so like, I ran a half marathon, my first half marathon last year. I used to drive to the shop that was like a 5-minute walk from my house. Like, I was not the kind of person who did those things. So now I'm always like, I was never the kind of person who did that, so I'm going to go and do that. Yeah. So it's just, it's like living, everything I do now is for that girl who didn't think she was going to live. Like, every single day that I live now is like life beyond death. It's like, I never expected to get to here, so I'm just going to keep going and see where it takes me. And I think it's so important that you transform as a whole person. There's so many elements of my life that have contributed to who I am now that go way beyond like a physical goal, a fat loss goal, a career goal. Like, all of these are components of me as a person, and I had to do the really tough work in therapy for a year and a half that was like so hard but so necessary for me to be able to continue to live a nice life. So it's almost like I've never been unwilling to do the really, really tough stuff because I know that it will always pay off at the other side.
Yeah, it always does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think when there's no option to stay the same, because things would just get worse if you stay the same.
100%. And I'm not a remarkable person in any way, shape or form.
I think you are.
I know that's but like, I just mean there's nothing like about me that's like, you know, like so different from other people, or like I have some sort of unique gift. I'm just a normal lassie for Blantyre. Like, there's nothing about me I was never like majorly intelligent or really gifted at things. Like, I just have an absolute refusal to quit. And I feel like that's the thing that always guides me through life, is that I just refuse to quit. Yeah,
good. And two more things, sorry, I know I said one more thing, but I remember when we were sat down at Joe's, what would you call that, meet-up day for all his clients, Joe's event, and you said to me, someone once asked me what I would say to your abuser if you seen him again. And your answer really shocked me. But I also thought it gave me shivers as well. Yeah. Because what did you say?
Say thank you. I'd say thank you. Like, I'd probably say fuck you.
Yeah.
And then thank you, because so much of my drive in life has come from being in such a place of adversity that, like, I just always call it life after death. Like, you cannot get to a lower point in life than I ever was there. And everything that drives me, and I mean everything I do, like, if I'm running, if I'm building a new piece of work, if I'm, you know, taking on something really difficult in my personal life, if I'm going through any sort of challenge, I do it all for that girl. So, like, without that experience in my life, like, it should never have happened. It should never happen to anyone. But, like, I hope that he hears me on podcasts. I hope that he sees reels of me speaking on Instagram. I hope that he sees my face when I'm talking at events. Like, the memory of what he did to me is my justice. So if another woman can hear my experience and make her decision to leave and decide to step into who she wants to be, like, that for me is justice. So I will never shut up about domestic abuse. I'll never shut up about my experience, because for me it's justice for what happened to me. And it's also making sure that then has an impact far beyond what it did for me, but for other women to know, like, you can create a life after a life like that for yourself.
Amazing. It's like the whole Lady Gaga thing. Have you heard Lady Gaga?
Oh, you want to be like at a coffee in the deli without hearing my song. That's me.
When you were saying that there, I was like, oh my God.
That's it. There's I said it on another podcast, but you ever heard the song Silver Springs by Fleetwood Mac?
If you played it, I would. I don't know the names of the song, but I do love Fleetwood Mac.
So this is just after, there's a live performance of it, right? So it was just after Lindsay Buckingham cheated on Stevie Nicks, and there's a line in the song and everybody says she's like cursing him in it, like she's putting a spell on it, on him, and she says, I'll follow you down until the sound of my voice will haunt you. And see, that for me, that's like my strap line, like, I want the sound of my voice to haunt you forever, because that's my version of justice. So yeah, there's the thank you for the life that I have now, but also that wee bit of revenge of like, I'm going to haunt you.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, quick fire question, who was someone, like we see with Lead Her, we want to think of like women who have inspired us when we're younger, but it can be men too, but who's someone that comes to mind that really kind of helped you believe that you could achieve things in the future?
Yeah, my grandpa's always the pinnacle, right? He always has his spot in terms of women. There's two women in my life who really come to mind. Manty Liz is the first one. Manty Liz was just like, her and my cousin Mandy, her daughter, just career women. They still had children, but career-driven women. Mandy's a very successful partner in a law firm. Manty Liz was really high up in the steel industry. They always drove nice cars. They always had designer clothes. They would go on nice holidays, but they were strong, fierce women who showed to me that you can have it all. You can have a family. You can have a career.
Work hard.
You can work hard. You will never let a man treat you like you're not worthy. And for me, they were such huge role models as a child, and understanding you don't have to sacrifice what you want to meet the societal expectations of who you should be. So they're first, and then second one for me is my mentor Sharon, because she just sort of carried that torch through into my professional life as well. Never letting a man speak over me in a meeting and calling them out if they do. Never been scared to say how I feel, and never allowing somebody to tell me that I was being emotional. Never allowing men to tell me I was being aggressive when I was being assertive. So they come to mind as the people who have really nurtured who I am as a woman today, big time.
Amazing. And I feel like that's just going to be so much more for like the next generation after us, having Karens.
Totally.
Like I feel like there's so many more Karens like me, and you're like, yes, no, you can do it, don't let anyone speak to you that way. It's so strong now that I think like coming up it's exciting, and it's nice that more women are going to be feeling empowered. So thank you honestly so much. You've helped me so many ways personally, which we'll maybe cover another day if I can ever squeeze you back.
Absolutely. I promise I'll not speak for as long next time.
But I just like that story is just so powerful, and if we know we can help one person from sharing that, it's so worth it. So thank you for your time today. And everyone else, thank you so much for listening. And Jen, are you okay if anyone was to message and ask you any questions regarding
absolutely.
today? She might talk your ear off, but I will. No, that's great. I'll share Jen's details in the podcast description. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and taken something away. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you all very soon. Bye.